our Frankenstein thematic analysis.
With Sophia Andrews and Celia Swartz.
Alright, so our statement was you can't escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. I think most of us know what that means, but just to further explain it, if you have something that you're responsible for or something in your life, you can't just keep pushing it off every single day because it's never going to go away. It's still there. You're not escaping the reality, you're just pushing it off.
Oh, yeah.
And this relates back to the book because Victor Frankenstein, after he creates life in the creature, he immediately hates it with all of his being and he tries to escape it, but he doesn't really solve the problem by either killing it or taking it in, and he just puts it off, but it still follows him and it never goes away.
So the quote is, the time length arrives when grief is rather an indulgence than a necessity, and the smile that plays upon the lips, although it may be deemed a sacrilege, is not banished. So this is saying there comes a certain time when grief is an indulgence, not a necessity. So at some point when someone first dies or something first happens that you're grieving over, it's a necessity, but eventually once you keep just indulging in that grief and sitting in it and basking in the grief, then it's not a necessity anymore. It's just bad for you.
And this relates back to the book because at the first period, at the beginning of the book, Victor is kind of grieving a lot and he's holding it in him for a long period of time, and it's kind of just consuming him, and it's not benefiting anyone.
So we chose some important vocabulary within our quote, like indulgence, necessity, smile, sacrilege, and banish. So indulgence is obviously one because it's the main part of the quote. You're indulging in the grief. Same with the necessity. Grief is not a necessity at some points in your life, which is really important. And we just thought that smile really stood out because when you think of grief, you don't really think about a smile playing upon your lips or anything like that.
And we chose sacrilege and banish because grief is seen as a bad thing, but that doesn't prevent people from still doing it, and a lot of people still choose to grieve even if it's long past the period of time where grief is a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we chose the best use of figurative language in our opinion, which is the smile that plays upon the lips. Okay, so we're just going to take an analysis of the second part of the quote within this. So, and the smile that plays upon the lips, although it may be deemed a sacrilege, is not banished. So, Sophia, do you want to know what that means?
Yeah, it's comparing a smile to grief because when you smile, usually it forms upon your face over a period, not a period of time, but it forms. And it's the same thing with grief. Grief isn't a very sudden thing. It kind of happens. There's different stages of it. And much like this, it's seen as wrong, but it's never banished in society.
So we highlighted in pink the two main points and parts of our quote. So, as we talked about, the first one is talking about how there comes a certain time in your life when a grief is an indulgence, not a necessity. And that really ties into the second one
because even though it's seen as wrong, people still do it all the time, and it's seen as something to indulge in and not something that you need to do.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're just going to discuss how this really ties back into the book Frankenstein.
And it ties back because grief is a constant theme that is around the book, and it's not just in Victor, it's kind of seen throughout a lot of the characters, and it's really seen as an indulgence throughout the whole book, and it's never really a necessity.
And this goes back to our thematic statement. Because grief is a huge part of avoiding the next day. It's really easy to sit in the grief and stop thinking about what's going to happen next, just because you're so caught up in the loss of whatever you're grieving. And that concludes our Frankenstein thematic statement.
Keep it down.